mainstay on the calendar since 1987 and named in honour of Spanish legend Angel Nieto. Some of MotoGP's most epic and nail-biting battles have been fought out in front of fanatical fans. We're set for another stunner in Spain. It's time to race in MotoGP. So 4.423 kilometres, 2.75 miles. That's the layout of the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto. 90 kilometres south of Sevilla, the 39th successive year on our Grand Prix calendar, dating all the way back to 1987. Valentino Rossi, the most successful rider here in MotoGP with 6 victories. Tight in that first sector when you run through turns 1 and 2. Heavy braking zone into turn 6. Good overtaking hotspot, that as well in sector 3. And are we going to get more fireworks? Are we going to get more drama in that final turn? We've seen it so often down the years, haven't we, here in Andalusia. 20 years ago, isn't it, since Valentino Rossi and Sete Gibernau's iconic battle in 2005. Overtaking hotspots, plenty of them. This was into turn 9 last year. More of the same, please, from Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia. This was 12 months ago in their thriller in Jerez. So, on his pole position for the first time in over 3 years, it was Fabio Quartararo, the factory Yamaha, that led the field away in the 12-lap sprint. Briefly dropped back to second place before it was aggressive on Marc Marquez into the first corner. But it was a short-lived challenge for the sprint podium as the Frenchman tumbled out of contention on lap 2 at turn 6. He was all in for the win, which eventually, once again, went the way of factory Ducati star Marc Marquez. The number 93 has taken all of our sprint wins so far in 2025, and that means he comes into the Grand Prix of Spain in just under 45 minutes time with a healthy 20-point lead in the World Championship. His closest rival, well, it was Alex Marquez on the Gresini Ducati, who has taken 5 second places in our Sprint Saturday so far this season. Can Quartararo bounce back and record his first Grand Prix podium in 2 years? As always, this was 6:30 a.m. This morning in Jerez, and the hillsides around turn 9, well, they were already absolutely jam-packed to the rafters. This is why we love MotoGP. This is why we love coming to Jerez. As we mentioned, it's one of our blue ribbon events. A classic Grand Prix venue where we've seen so many classic, iconic battles down the years. Let's hope there's more in store. Over 25 laps coming your way at 2 p.m. local time. That was in the darkness in the early hours of this morning, and now soaking up some glorious rays of sunshine ahead of round 5 in 2025. It is a capacity sell-out crowd. Look at that, there's barely a spare blade of grass on the hillsides, barely a spare seat in the house. Hot conditions for what's the hottest ticket in world sport here today. We expect one of our biggest ever Spanish Grand Prix crowds. Beautiful part of Spain, this a lovely region of Andalusia, near the southern west tip of Spain. And most of the fans who have packed into this historic venue, well, they are here for one thing and one result and one rider, and that is the home hero Marc Marquez, who has already taken 3 of our opening 4 Grand Prix to put himself in a position of authority coming into round 5. And this, if he does win the Spanish Grand Prix for the first time since 2019, if he does win the Spanish Grand Prix in MotoGP for the 4th time, previous wins for Marc in 2014, 2018 and 2019, well, this will perhaps be one of the most poignant wins of his Grand Prix career, because, of course, it was right here 5 years ago where Marc Marquez feared that a crash at turn 3 in the opening Grand Prix of 2020 may well have ended his career. That is all in the past, that is all behind him, because now Marc Marquez is back to his sublime best. And can he shine in the Spanish sunshine? Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box, bringing you all of the long build-up to this Spanish Grand Prix. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane, loving the shots of the crowd on the hillsides and in the grandstands. trust us, you had to set the alarms pretty early to get yourselves into the paddock in Jerez this morning, certainly to get one of the best viewing spots around this 4.4 kilometre Jerez circuit. But after Moto3 and Moto2 have kicked us off today, we're all set for MotoGP action. This was a rewind 2 yesterday. Marc Marquez got a great launch, as always, on the factory Ducati. Super aggressive move on the brakes by Quartararo into the first corner. This, though, was at the end of the back straight into turn 6. Fabio Quartararo just revelling in being at the front of any kind of race in MotoGP after a pretty barren couple of years. Just being that little bit too eager on the front end of that Yamaha into turn 6, and down he went. Marc Marquez, I'm not going to say picking up the pieces, because Marc looked like he was in cruise control yesterday, and this was him enjoying the special atmosphere after the sprint on Saturday. 93, leading what, a 10,000 strong choir out of the hillsides here. He does like to get them whipped up into a frenzy. He's got his own dedicated grandstands at turn 1 and 2. Lewis, the home crowd, as we mentioned, they're here for just one thing. They expect, there's huge pressure on Marc Marquez to deliver his first Spanish Grand Prix success in what feels like 6 very long years.
Yeah, and of course it could potentially see a story come full circle from 2020 here for Marc Marquez. The injury, which looked like it had changed his MotoGP career potentially forever. Fortunately, though, from a Marc Marquez point of view, it looks like he's now potentially going to return to those glory days which saw these grandstands come here and the fans pack them expectant of victory, and they're expectant of victory for Marc Marquez today. If you want to try and do what Marc Marquez does, then on Wednesday you can, when MotoGP 25 is available to purchase and download. Hopefully you're much better at those video games than myself and Matt Pertar, because I can't say that I'm particularly good on those. Certainly not a threat for Marc Marquez any further down the line. But from the 93's point of view, he starts this Grand Prix as the favourite, even if he doesn't start it from pole position after the extraordinary heroics from Fabio Quartararo yesterday. We saw just how difficult it was for Quartararo to keep Marc Marquez behind him at the start of the sprint yesterday, and Marc Marquez will surely have his sights set on getting past that Yamaha very quickly once this race gets underway.
And what a sight that is. It's MotoGP at its most popular best. There's been an incredible sort of goosebump feeling when you just walk into the paddock here. There's nothing quite like it when you walk in on race day morning at Jerez. In darkness, it's pitch black, but you can hear the tens of thousands of fans already making a raucous noise on the hillsides. This is another flashback to yesterday's sprint. Marc Marquez going side by side with Quartararo's factory Yamaha. Just pushed Fabio onto a slightly dirtier line on the outside. His Yamaha had already started shaking, perhaps some turbulent air as well. And this was where Quartararo's sprint podium hopes disappeared on just the second lap of 12 in that sprint yesterday. He has not had a Grand Prix podium, has El Diablo, since Mandalika all the way back in 2023. But as he said to the media last night, he was just enjoying the fact that he looks back to his old best. He looks competitive again after all of his recent struggles on the factory at YZR M1. It was all in for the win. It was win it or bin it. Sadly, it was the latter on this occasion. But can Fabio Quartararo end that podium drought? Well, the master is here, and he really is a master around Jerez. Nobody in Grand Prix history, and we've been coming here for nearly 40 years, has won more races, more Grand Prix around the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto than the GOAT, Valentino Rossi. Here, of course, to roar on Frankie Morbidelli and Fabio Di Gianantonio. Buongiorno, yes, hello Valentino. We hope you enjoy your afternoon here in Spain. Yesterday, his boys, Frankie Morbidelli, 4th in the sprint. Fabio Di Gianantonio completing a lockout of the top 6 for Ducati. It was a painful old sprint as well for Frankie Morbidelli. Be a long 25 laps this afternoon for the Italian. A bit of neck pain, battered and bruised after a real hefty get-off yesterday morning at turn 4.
Yeah, Morbidelli wasn't alone in crashing in yesterday morning's free practice 2 session. There are a couple of riders walking a little wounded coming into this Spanish Grand Prix. Alex Rins is another who had a heavy crash in the same session at the same part of the racetrack. He starts from the back of the grid later on, but the eyes of the thousands upon thousands of Spanish fans are very much at the front. 3 world champions starting from the front row of the grid. Fabio Quartararo, Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia at the Spanish Grand Prix share the front row. It does not get much better than that.
Quartararo back-to-back front row starts for the first time in nearly 3 years. Sachsenring and Assen in 2022. Such probably a figure wherever we go in the world, isn't he, Marc Marquez? But he has got vociferous partisan support here in Jerez. It will be an incredibly popular victory for him if he is to win for a 4th time in MotoGP, of course. An accolade, a record that does beckon as well for his teammate, Pecco Bagnaia, who fires away from the front row of the grid. Bagnaia, 4th place on the grid, I should say. Bagnaia looking for his 4th successive victory here. The winner in 2022, 2023 and 2024. Trying to be the first rider in MotoGP history to win 4 on the spin. What will Quartararo's response be after yesterday? I loved his attitude, Lewis. We both read his post-sprint comments where it was, I just was loving being back at the front, and do you know what? I thought, I'm not fighting for the World Championship. To hell with it. Let's see what happens and go for broke.
It's a taste he's not had for quite some time, but it was a taste that he got very familiar with back in those glory days of 2021 and the first half of 2022. That last victory at the Sachsenring, the last time that we saw Fabio Quartararo lead a lap of anything in MotoGP. So important milestone ticked off for him and for Yamaha, who of course dream of being back at the front once again and challenging the Ducatis. Fabio Quartararo so good around this Jerez circuit. It is a 5th pole position for El Diablo at this Circuito de Jerez. Angel Nieto, of course, he converted 2 of the previous 4 into victories, those 2 dramatic days in 2020 here. Fabio Quartararo going for broke yesterday. Will his approach be any different today, knowing that there are big points up for grabs, and he's confident that he can challenge for the podium? Yeah,
he went for broke, and all he did was break a factory Yamaha. That bike park is just a sight to behold, isn't it? It's a unique... The unique sights and sounds of the Circuito de Jerez, Angel Nieto. You really do have to be here to see it, to believe just quite what the atmosphere is like here. Seldom do we get to see a crowd so passionate, so partisan about their MotoGP. Of course, we go to Le Mans in 2 weeks' time, which has our record ever crowd. Well, what about overtaking hot spots here in Jerez? Turn 1, Turn 6, Turn 9, that's where we saw Marc Marquez challenge Bagnaia last year, and Turn 13. Well, Turn 13 has been the scene of some epic last corner battles in MotoGP. My first ever Grand Prix, 1996, Mick Doohan versus Alex Crivier. What a day that was, and there was a massive track invasion while the race was actually still going on. 20-year anniversary, 2005. Who will ever forget Valentino Rossi versus Sete Gibernau? Marc Marquez was probably the last of the all-time classic last lap showdowns here in Jerez, when he was fighting Jorge Lorenzo for the podium back in 2013. Will anybody be close enough to fight Marc at the last corner here this afternoon, as he looks for a 4th Grand Prix success in the opening 5? Potentially a milestone success beckons for one of our Spanish stars on the grid today, because if one of them does win this afternoon's race, it will be the 200th MotoGP victory by a Spanish rider.
So here is Frankie Morbidelli, who'll be looking to ensure that that statistic waits another couple of weeks. As mentioned, he's not at 100% at this stage, suffering from a bit of aching in his neck. You would imagine there might have been a painkiller or 2 taken for Frankie ahead of this MotoGP battle, as he looks to try and block out the pain and battle for the podium. What can we expect then from the KTMs this afternoon? The factory boys, Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder, 12th and 13th on the grid respectively. Their team manager Aki Ayo joins Jack.
Yeah, it does indeed. Great to be able to chat to Aki at a weekend where I think there are signs that KTM are starting to find their rhythm in 2025. Would you go along with that? How would you describe how the weekend has gone so far?
Yeah, I would say maybe I even put like the last 3 weekends together since Austin. A little bit in Argentina already, but especially since Austin, Qatar here. I feel positive. I feel that we are We are searching, we are finding the direction, and many positive signs for this. Of course, Maverick's performance and race in Qatar here. Every rider, let's say, feel especially Friday was good yesterday. Yesterday race, we are not really happy. Seems like when the grip situation, the grip level was a little bit lower, we were a little bit struggling more. And of course, today is again the new day. In the morning, grip was really good. It was quite good level for all of us. And let's say, in afternoon now, of course, grip is different, but also for comparing to yesterday, everyone is with a medium rear tire, I guess. So that also, let's say, changed the situation. So fingers crossed that all the work what we have done pays off.
You mentioned Maverick there. I think everyone has been blown away by the speed at which he's adapted to the KTM. It feels right now that he is so crucial to this project. He is the one that's showing the direction for everyone else. How amazed have you been at his ability to adapt with this bike so quickly?
I think it's always like this. Pedro was last year rookie, he was the reference in one moment. Now Maverick is really strong. It's always like this, that if we have someone who is really doing well, it's also a very important reference follow. It's not the copy, but it's the reference, and it helps all the work, it helps all the development, for sure, to go, better chance to go to right direction and everything. But if we talk about Maverick, I know him so long time, and I can see that mentally he's living his best part of the life at the moment. So it's very nice to follow his professional work as well.
In the factory box, there's so much noise surrounding Pedro at the moment. His displeasure with the progress made over to the winter months is obvious from what he's been saying. But with Maverick leading the way at the moment, how much of a test of Pedro's character is this current situation? Because if there's all of this talk, all of this hype, above everything else, you've been in the game long enough. Rule number one in motorcycle racing, you've got to beat your teammate. And right now, he's not doing that.
Racing, the guys here, all the guys, they are so professional. And for example, Pedro, he took one kind of situation is really correct way. I used to always say that let's say challenging moments makes us even more strong, and Pedro is a good example for that he's using those moments really well with really good attitude. Let's say, as I say before, you cannot copy your teammate, but of course to collect all the information around from teammates, from the team, he's doing really good job there. So as I always say, I don't follow too much what's happening around in the paddock. We have to focus for our work and for the things what we can touch.
Aki, always great to chat. Have a good race.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Red Bull KTM boss Aki Ajo. Maverick Vinales was the best of the rest in the sprint yesterday, as he took the checker flag in 7th place. So the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 rider was 3 places ahead of Pedro Acosta. Acosta outside the points in the sprint. Brad Binder also taking the checker flag home in 11th place. Binder has not started inside the top 10 in the last 6 Grand Prix. What about Jack Miller? So Jack Miller, a former Jerez podium finisher here for KTM. And of course, that unforgettable weekend for KTM here back in 2023 when Brad Binder won the sprint. One of the 2 times here in Jerez 2 years ago, actually, that we've had 2 KTMs finish on a Grand Prix podium in MotoGP together. You do fear that that's unlikely to change over the course of the next 25 laps or so here in Jerez, given the fact that Ducati was so dominant in the sprint yesterday, and Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder in particular are certainly chasing their best form on that struggling RC16.
Yeah, KTM's best shots clearly looks from the grid line, and to be from Maverick Vinales. I don't think any of us, when we took our seats on the Sunday evening in Qatar, expected what we got from Maverick Vinales. Penalty or no penalty, he was fighting for the victory in that Qatar Grand Prix. Way ahead of anyone's realistic expectations of Maverick. If he can do something similar today, it will be another superhuman effort from Top Gun. But I guess his performance in Qatar means that we can't truly write him off at any stage, because he is so freakishly talented, and it was on full display a couple of weeks ago. Can he do something similar again 2 weeks on at his home Grand Prix?
Yeah, you do feel it will be something of a freak result if Ducati do not win once again here. Marquez's sprint success, Mark, that is of course yesterday over 12 laps. Ducati's 38th successive victory. And a win this afternoon, which you feel may well be already nailed on, will be their 22nd successive victory in the Premier class, which would tie them with Honda's previous all-time record winning streak of 22, which dates all the way back to 1997 and 1998. Just a further indication of just how Ducati have become the powerhouse factory in the MotoGP World Championship. They are now the clear reference, the brand to beat, the onus and everybody else to play the catch-up game. It's got a little bit quieter outside the circuit, thankfully. That's because there's probably about 100,000 fans now inside the gates here at the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto. I must admit, I'm really looking forward to what lies in store over the next hour or so. Not particularly looking forward to maybe the drive back into town to the hotel later on this evening, because, yeah, it might take us a while.
Yeah, I want to fly out of here at 9:30 this evening, and that feels like it's going to be a tall order to make that one on time, given how many fans we're going to be trying to overtake on the way to the airport. But that's a problem for later on, and it's certainly a good problem to have, because how could you not want a site like that for a MotoGP Grand Prix under the sun in southern Spain at the end of April? Last year, of course, they produced an incredible soundtrack to what was a wonderful battle between Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia. They will be on their feet and screaming themselves hoarse in about half an hour's time when MotoGP bikes flood into that part of the Jerez circuit for the first time. It is one of the iconic sights and sounds of our 22-round MotoGP calendar.
Yeah, we got a real nail-biter here last year, didn't we? Bagnaia versus Marc Marquez. Are we going to get a repeat here this afternoon? Pecco Bagnaia, I'm not going to say a dejected, frustrated figure, maybe frustrated at the end of the sprint yesterday. Third place is where he started, did not make a single overtake. It was a classic Bagnaia sprint, really, because no real forward progress as Fabio Quartararo gets a second bite of the cherry then from pole position here in Jerez this weekend. As we mentioned, he's the first non-Ducati pole starter since Pedro Acosta in Motegi last year. The first time we'll see a Japanese bike start from the end of a MotoGP race since Marc Marquez took pole for Repsol and pulled him out in 2023. This is the 30th successive Grand Prix now that Fabio Quartararo has gone without a podium. Can he somehow put that factory Yamaha in the mix against an armada of Ducatis here? Tell you what, you've been doing some brisk business if you've been hiring out the umbrellas here this weekend in Jerez. Factor 50 and some after sun, I think, has been the order of the day. A few cold drinks and a few ice creams will go down a treat as well. What will go down a treat is a repeat of the Bagnaia-Marquez result of last year. Frankie Morbidelli's GP24 finally does fire into life.
Yeah, he was cutting it a little bit fine there, because the pit lane exit closes in about 90 seconds time, so you don't want to have any gremlins at this particular point in proceedings, otherwise you'd have had to start the Grand Prix from the back of the grid. But Frankie Morbidelli does now finally leave pit lane, and he will finally take up his place on the second row of the grid.
Yeah, and here is his hero, his manager and his mentor, the reason he says why he's part of the MotoGP World Championship right now, Valentino Rossi. Tell you what, we'd settle for a repeat of Rossi Gipinau in 2005, wouldn't we, in about an hour's time here, because it will mean that we've been treated to yet another epic finale in the Spanish Grand Prix. The course commentator, who throughout this weekend here in Jerez has done an absolutely phenomenal job of getting this crowd properly whipped up into a frenzy. Well, they're doing it right now once again. Myself and Lewis have got a wonderful vantage point here. We're perched at the top of the main grandstand behind well, what looks like at the moment a sea of red. Marc Marquez not lacking support there, but there are the fans in the main grandstand. Thankfully, myself and Lewis, we're tucked away in a rather nice, air-conditioned commentary box right now.
Yeah, which isn't soundproof, so you might hear some of the Spanish fans just below us getting particularly excited. This is one of the riders they'll be cheering on. Here's another, Pedro Acosta, before we cut to Alex Marquez. Of course, another Grand Prix weekend where we ask the question, is Alex Marquez finally going to taste MotoGP success at last? Let's take a look at your grid then, and it is Fabio Quartararo who starts from pole position for the first time in over 3 years. Mandalika 2022 was the last time Quartararo sat on the grid on a Sunday on pole. Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia for the factory Ducati team start alongside him. Alex Marquez, Frankie Morbidelli and Maverick Vinales together on row 2. Aldeguer, Gian Antonio and Joan Mir, top Honda in the grid. He completes row 3 in 9th. Every rider to this point, as you can see, medium front, medium rear, Michelin tyres. Row 4, we find Johan Zarco from Marco Bezzecchi and Pedro Acosta. Brad Binder eliminated in Q1 13th ahead of Jack Miller and I Agura. First of the Trackhouse Aprilias once again is the rookie Luca Marini, 16th, as he looks to go slightly better on the medium rear tyre after struggling on the soft yesterday. 16th ahead of Raul Fernandez and Enea Bastianini, who we are so accustomed to seeing move forward in the race on a Sunday. Aleix Espargaro, wildcard for Honda, 19th from Augusto Fernandez and Solcat Chantra. Completing the grid, Lorenzo Savadori and Alex Rins. And as you saw there, at this stage, every rider in the field, medium front, medium rear Michelins.
Yeah, that felt like it was always going to be the preferred pick. Thousands upon thousands of motorcycles in the bike parks here in Jerez. They've been making some noise in downtown Jerez. Trust us, the party never really stops from Thursday through Sunday here in this beautiful part of Andalusia. Famous for sherry, famous for flamenco dancing, famous for equestrian. Well, it's horsepower of a different kind that really matters right now, though, as we continue our countdown towards the 25-lap Spanish Grand Prix. Marco Bezzecchi, his last MotoGP podium was right here in Jerez 1 year ago. That feels like a far too long a wait for a rider of Marco's caliber, as Valentino Rossi makes his way to what is now a very, very busy grid here in Jerez. You might just see off into the distance there on the outside of turn 1, the bright red dedicated We Are 93 grandstands. Well, Jerez awash with MotoGP legends. There is one of the best to ever do it. 8-time MotoGP world champion Giacomo Agostini. Valentino Rossi's here, Dani Pedrosa's here, Andrea Dovizioso's here. Good old legends race, actually, couldn't we? At some point this weekend, as Pecco Bagnaia, well, he's just settling on some shade inside the factory Ducati garage. Can he finally step out of the shadow of the Marquez brothers? Because he has very much been cast in the supporting role so far in 2025, Lewis. And there's been all this talk of late. Oh, Qatar is Pecco Bagnaia's track. It wasn't. Jerez is Pecco Bagnaia's track. It remains to be seen if that's the case. He's got it all on. There's a lot of focus and attention on what Pecco can deliver in this Grand Prix. A
big afternoon coming up for Bagnaia, and I guess what we'll be looking out for Pecco Bagnaia is what he can deliver on the first lap. Remember here last year, he was 7th on the grid and came through to lead at the end of the first lap. Bagnaia, so often at his best, is electric on that opening lap, particularly in the Sunday Grand Prix. Remember, he starts from the outside of that front row. Can he get his nose ahead of Marc Marquez on the run down to that first corner and give his teammates something to think about?
And can you remember, flashback to the 2024 Spanish Grand Prix, where on that opening lap, Pecco Bagnaia going from 7th to 1st, and his move was just astonishing, wasn't it? The double overtake around the outside of both Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi into turn 6. Not just probably the pass of the season, but probably a contender for pass of the decade, wasn't it? The crowd once again make some noise. You can feel the noise. As you mentioned, it's a track that just makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Well, I'm delighted to welcome to MotoGP. We've seen him inside the Marc Marquez factory Ducati garage. Tennis superstar Carlos Alcaraz joins Jack.
Yeah, it does indeed. Great to have Carlos down here on the grid with us. Now, for those that don't know, Carlos's motto is Cabeza, Corazón, Cojones, which is head, heart and balls. And I think, Carlos, that perfectly sums up MotoGP too. What have you made of the experience so far?
Well, I think it's a unique experience for me, for my friends, for my brother who came with me. So I mean, it's the first time that I came here to watch the motos, to watch Marco for the first time rising. So it's gonna be great. So yeah, I mean, since the early morning I've been here, walking around, see what it is, and I think it's unbelievable and a great experience. So I'm super excited to see the race.
Well, it's great to have you here. Hopefully we can have you back in the future as well. Enjoy the race.
For sure, I'll be back. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, great to hear Carlos Alcaraz and enjoying the atmosphere, and great to hear he plans to be back. Once you've been bitten by the MotoGP bug, well, that's it. You are committed for life. Four-time Grand Slam winner. We've seen him here supporting Marc Marquez. So, yeah, wonderful to see a real, genuine Spanish sporting superstar enjoying one of the great Spanish sporting events on the calendar. There is the very distinctive, is it the flying saucer, the Jerez UFO, it's been labelled. Well, so far this year there's been plenty of out-of-this-world appearances so far for the number 93, who comes then to second place on the grid. First time on a Sunday this season that number 93 is not firing away from pole position. Brother Alex, can he finally find himself on the top step of the podium this season? Yesterday's sprint second, rather astonishingly, was his 8th second place of the season so far. We thought the 6th in Qatar meant we could drop the Mr. Second tag, but I think he is now once again Mr. P2, isn't he? He
is at the moment, and he's second in the World Championship too, 20 points behind his brother. Of course, Alex Marquez did lead the World Championship briefly after Austin. If Marc Marquez is going to slip up again, then he could well take it back. But Alex Marquez, I guess his thoughts now will be on just getting himself through the first lap and just consolidating his position at the front of the field. We're going to pause very, very shortly for a minute's silence in memory of Pope Francis, who sadly passed away very recently, of course, brought sadness across the world. We will pause for a minute's silence.
Esta curva es la número 7, en tan solo unos segundos vamos a arrancar con ese minuto de silencio. Señoras y señores, les rogamos que nos acompañen en un minuto de silencio en memoria del Papa Francisco. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us for minutes of silence in memory of Pope Francis.
Well, an impeccably observed minute's silence in memory of Pope Francis. Great tribute that from the huge crowd here in Jerez. Some shot, that, isn't it? The spectacular helicopter shot on what is a nigh on perfect spring day. What a day it is to go Grand Prix motorcycle racing. Beautiful temperatures, little bit of a cooling breeze. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit jealous of the fans that are sat in the main grandstand just ahead of us. Myself and Lewis, we've always got two of the best seats in the house. But yeah, a little bit green with envy, just looking at how much the fans outside of our commentary box are enjoying this atmosphere. Well, let's go from our two Jacks down on the grid. Jack Appleyard has got Pramac Yamaha star Jack Miller with him.
Yeah, I do indeed. After what has, without any spoilers, been a pretty special day for Australian motorsports. You've got a victory to your name around this place as well. You must be feeling some pretty good energy ahead of this one, Jack.
Yeah, feeling good energy, as good as you can do after, yesterday's result, but we try and put that behind us. Made a decent change this morning, just trying to feel that front end a little bit more. Bike's working well. Rider needs to be better, but we're getting there. Looking forward to a decent one around here. Hopefully we can pull our finger out and, hold up our end.
Have a good one.
Cheers, Ake.
Yeah, thanks to Jack. And Jack, yeah, have a good one, the Australian. We're going to take another pause here now in the commentary box as we're ready for what I'm sure is always a spectacular rendition of the national anthem of Spain. Up next now in Jerez.
It is a spectacular sight, it is a spectacular sound, the Spanish Grand Prix. There is very little that matches this. Well, Fabio Quartararo goes from pole position. What can he do from pole? Paolo Pavesio from Yamaha joins Jack.
Paolo, a true roller coaster weekend so far for Yamaha. The highest of highs, the lowest of lows. What has Fabio learned from yesterday that he can put into action today?
I think, first of all, yesterday was an important day because we keep proving that the performance are coming back and that we have a fantastic rider. Mistakes can happen, or let's say it's very also thin the line between being hero and finally ended up with a 0 point. Today I just wish Fabio to enjoy, offer to us a great race and get the maximum result we can.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Paolo Pavesio. Well, imagine having that particular vantage point above Jerez. Quite spectacular, although if you are slightly weak in the stomach, it might well have you a little bit uncomfortable. There's Carlos Alcaraz there, just behind the throng of cameramen and photographers, looks on. That is one Spanish sporting superstar glancing at another. 4 Grand Slam titles for Carlos Alcaraz, a back-to-back Wimbledon champion, looking at the 6 times MotoGP world champion. 2 giants of Spanish sport as one watches another who now sets to go from the front row of the grid.
Yeah, has Marc Marquez got another ace up his sleeve here in Jerez. Big expectations for both Marc and Pecco Bagnaia in this upcoming Spanish Grand Prix. What are the thoughts of the boss, Davide Tardozzi, who joins Jack?
Davide, special atmosphere, sold-out crowds, all waiting to see the number 93 put on a performance. Can he deliver?
Yeah, I'm sure that Marc has something on top of the talent here in this racetrack. We know from the data that turn on the left like 4, 7, and 8 is really fast, but we'll see if Fabio will not do any mistake. Sure, will be very tough to beat, while I'm sure that Pecco wants his revenge and Alex is there. So it will be a tough race because with the medium back tire and the long race, it will be another race from yesterday.
Good luck, Davide.
Thank you.
Yeah, a different race compared to the sprint yesterday, with Ducati hoping it won't be a different outcome, as the aerial display team put on another great show here in Jerez, who will be flying the highest though at the end of our 25-lap Grand Prix of Spain. A bird's eye view, an incredible, amazing view of the Circuito de Jerez, Angel Nieto. Pretty good day for flying, isn't it? Maverick Vinales, well, he's the top gun himself, isn't he? 6th place on the grid goes Vinales. As he mentioned, he was the best of the rest outside of the dominant Ducati top 6 yesterday. And of course, can he once again get himself in that fight? He was the shock leader for 5 laps, wasn't he, a couple of weeks ago under the lights of the sail over in Doha, before the post-race tyre pressure penalty came his way and dropped him from 2nd down to 14th place. But there are clear evident signs that Vinales is definitely finding that KTM RC16 more to his liking. Valentino Rossi, well, he's been here, done it, and got the T-shirt, hasn't he, at Jerez. Fermin Aldeguer, then, the rookie sensation. Well, what a story he's had so far in 2025. A brilliant weekend over in Qatar. 4th in the sprint, 5th in the Grand Prix. He backed it up with an excellent 5th place yesterday in the sprint here in Jerez. And there are, well, it's like the good old days of Valentino Rossi, isn't it? The Yellow Army, this time around, supporting Fermin Aldeguer, the 20-year-old Spaniard, one of the rising stars in the MotoGP World Championship. Surely that first podium not too far away for our Moto2 winner here last year.
I believe our own Jack Appleyard termed those fans the Fermaniacs, and they are certainly becoming a more visible presence around the MotoGP calendar. Winner of the Moto2 race here last year was Fermin Aldeguer. Can he move forward from the 3rd row of the grid? He'll certainly have his sights set on Maverick Vinales on the KTM, who starts on the back of row 2. So Marc Marquez, will he face a tougher challenge, a stiffer test than he had yesterday in the sprint? 5 sprint wins out of 5, but of course his 100% qualifying record was broken by Maverick Vinales, by Fabio Quartararo, excuse me, in qualifying yesterday. Quartararo from pole position certainly got his elbows out at the start yesterday up against Marc Marquez, making it perfectly clear that he's not going to give this lead up without an almighty fight.
Are we destined for another Marquez versus Marquez showdown? 93 versus 73. Or can Pecco Bagnaia upset the form book, upset the home crowd as well, if he can manage a 4th consecutive MotoGP success here at the Circuito de Jerez, Angel Nieto, a track which he has made his own over the last 3 years. Alex Crivier and Valentino Rossi, previously winners of 3 successive MotoGP races here in Jerez. No rider since we came in nearly 4 decades ago has won 4 on the spin. That's what lies ahead potentially for Pecco Bagnaia. He goes away from the front row of the grid for just the 2nd time this season. 2nd on the grid. Marc Marquez looking for his first win in Jerez in 6 years. And Fabio Quartararo, well, he's looking for his first podium in 2 years. The Frenchman flying away from pole position here in sunny Spain.